and welcome to the very first episode of Print Bingo, where I am going to play a game of bingo and print something at the same time. So before we start, let me explain real quick how this is going to work. Basically, I'm going to play a game of 25 ball bingo. I'm going to have a card with numbers 1 to 25 on it, and each number is going to be linked to an object from one of these three websites. And in each episode, we're going to draw a number, mark it off on the card, and print whatever object is linked to that number. And we're going to keep playing until we line up 5 numbers in a row. So it's all pretty simple, all pretty straightforward, and it's just a bit of fun. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. Right, so we'll generate our first number, I'll call it out, we'll mark it off on a card, and then we'll take a look at what we're going to print. So our first number is... Man alive, it's number 5. So let's mark that off on the card and we will get that printed. So number 5 is this Borderlands loot chest on Thingiverse, and this has been uploaded by a user called Strange Quark. So I'm going to get these files downloaded so we can make a start on the print. If you want to check it out for yourself, I will post a link in the description. Right, so this is supposed to be the part of the video where I show you what printed and explain how great and wonderful everything is. However, it has been far from the case. You see, I actually started filming this just over a week ago, and in that time I have been absolutely plagued with failed prints. I've been plagued with a cold, you name it, it's gone wrong. Even my PC has had a tough time recording anything because it's just not that good. So, that file that you saw me slice and send to print earlier on, well, the lid on there completely failed to print. And the base, well, the base came out looking something like this, which, as you can see, is not that good at all. But at the time, I was like, you know what, it's no big deal. The lid, I just need to put some more supports on there. And the base, well, I kind of thought that was because I was at the end of a bottle of resin, and the resin that I was using wasn't that good anymore. So again, I thought no big deal, we'll use some fresh resin and we'll reprint that later on once we get the lid sorted out. So I re-supported the lid, re-sliced the file and sent that to print, and once again I was met with a failure, this time something looking like this. Now I thought, okay, I just need some more supports. So we'll send it to print. And we sent it to print many times. And when I say many times, I literally mean many times. You see, each time I sent it to print, I was met with a failure. And each time I had increased the supports and had no idea what was causing it to fail. I even got to the point where I changed the orientation to see if that would help, and it made no difference. I mean, this just looks like a cushion. You see, I had the supports coming out fine, but nothing was sticking to them. So this made me start to wonder if something had changed in Chitubox. You see, I've never had this issue before whatsoever, and the only thing that's different is I'm using the latest version of Chitubox now. So I thought perhaps a setting somewhere might have changed, or something's not quite how it used to be. So I decided to take a look at the default settings for the printer, and lo and behold, the lift and retract speeds have changed. Now, looking at these settings, it doesn't seem like that would cause anything to be pulled off of the supports, because if anything, it seems like the speed that the plate's lifted off the FEP is actually a little bit slower, and the speed that it's put back into the resin is faster. So I couldn't quite figure out if that would cause it to happen, so I just left them as they were. So at this point I was on the verge of just calling it a day and just sacking this off completely, but I didn't want to give up. I wanted to keep going. So I decided, right, I'm going to print this one more time, but I'm going to change the support settings. So I went back to the drawing board. I set the lid back to 45 degrees from the very first print, but this time I decided to not only add more supports, but actually change the contact depth of the supports. You see, as I said before, I've been using default settings and I had no issue whatsoever, so I wasn't sure if the support settings have changed in the new version. But I decided to increase the size of the contact depth from 0.6mm to 1.5mm, so I more than doubled it, which basically increases the surface area with the contact between the support and the item itself. Now, looking at the failed prints, obviously you can see I was having some success with these, and this led me to believe that I needed to add just more supports around this area, around the start of the print, because it seems to be after here is where it got pulled off. And when you look at the supports themselves, obviously the ones up here won't make contact until much later on, but from the evidence it was getting pulled off much earlier. So I changed the depth, I added more supports, and I sent it to print. And this time we were greeted with a successful print. And to be honest with you, you have no idea how much of a relief that was, because like I said, I've been going for over a week now just with constant issues. So to have this print was, I was just happy. So with the lid finally out of the way, the finishing line was in sight. You see, I thought all we have to do now is reprint the base. We've got fresh resin, you know, job's a good one. We're going to get this done, we're going to wrap it up, everything is going to be fine. Well, you know what thought did, don't you? You see, many hours later we were greeted with another printed base. However, this time round it looked exactly the same as the first time round, with the outside looking like absolute garbage. Now, it was at this point I was really confused as to what was going on. You know, we're using fresh resin, and the amount of times I'd cleaned out the resin tank when I've leveled the build plate and so on and so on. There's just no chance this could be down to the resin, and I don't really know what else could be causing this, especially when the inside of the base looks absolutely perfect. So in the interest of not giving up, I thought I'd try a little experiment and see if we could help rectify the issue. So what I decided to do was take a little bit of resin and apply it directly from the bottle by hand. And I thought I'd just try and smooth out some of that rough sort of, you know, finish on the outside and just cure it each time to see if we can help smoothen it out. Now, whilst that did work for the most part, that kind of rough gritty texture has gone. Because I was applying it by hand, it hasn't quite got that smooth finish that you would expect. It's still all a little bit uneven. So I decided just to start sanding it down, see if we can help, you know, sort that out and get it looking normal. And this is what we have now. You see, on camera it looks absolutely terrible. It doesn't look very good, but I can assure you the actual overall finish is a lot smoother than it seems, because the resin that I applied by hand has almost kind of left a slight glossy, almost transparent finish, which you can see in areas that I haven't actually managed to hit with sandpaper. But this, to be honest, for me just wasn't good enough. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to reprint the base again. And what I actually did is I created 2 new files. In the first one, I thought, well, in both of them I decided I'm going to change the orientation completely and see what happens, because that's the only thing I can think of that's causing that horrible finish. So in one file I decided to print it something like this, and basically I supported the hell out of the back and obviously had to add some supports in the middle. And I thought, if this file doesn't work, I will create another one and try and reprint it again. This is how dedicated I was. And on the second file, I had it something like this, where the main focus on the supports will be around the bottom and the inside. Because what I was trying to do is, whilst I know printing it flat worked, when rotating it, learning from the mistake of the lid, I was trying to avoid printing as many large flat areas as possible. Now, printing like this, I was a little bit concerned because obviously for a few layers between the top and the bottom, you're going to have quite a flat area. So I set that to print, and you know, I was a little bit skeptical, a little bit nervous, like, is this actually going to work? Or am I just wasting my time? Should I just cancel this and print the second one? I really wasn't sure, but I did check it a couple of times and it seems to be working out okay. But I thought, you know what, we'll wait till we get past those like larger flat areas and see how we're going to go there. I'm not really going to hold my hopes high on this one. We're just going to wait and see. Now, a few hours later, when it finished, I can reveal that we had this. An actual base that looks like it's supposed to. Now, the back of it does look a bit wobbly bobbly because, like I said, I had to support the hell out of the back and I just wanted to make sure that this would print. But I have sanded that down, and to be honest, off camera it doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it does on camera. But I was just glad that finally we had a base. We have a lid and we have a base after over a week of trying. So here we have all of our printed parts. Now, just to do a quick close-up, this is the original base that we printed. You can see how rough that looks. This one here is the second one that we printed that we tried to fix with the resin. And whilst it is a lot smoother, you can see that I did lose quite a bit of detail in the middle, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to reprint it. And this one is obviously our new one, which is much better and looks way more like it should. Now, everything was printed at 50% of its original scale. One thing I did notice though is that the bolt, I actually found it to be a little bit too small. Now, whilst it fits through there quite nicely, it didn't actually make much of a connection with the cap at the end. So what I decided to do when I reprinted the lid is I actually reprinted that bolt at a scale of 55%, and I found this one does fit a hell of a lot better. It did come out a little bit too long, so I had to trim it down a few mil, but it does actually fit this cap better, and it's just overall a much nicer fit. Now, speaking of fitting together, obviously the lid and the base does fit quite nicely and looks pretty good. However, if you look at the back, you'll see that these don't quite line up properly, which does cause a little bit of an issue when you put this bolt in. See, I'll just slide this through now real quick. Sort of easier said than done, no pressure. There you go. Obviously that cap I'll glue onto the end there. But now the bolt's in there, that prevents this from closing nicely, which is a little bit annoying, but to be honest, at this point I'm glad to have the whole thing printed. I did think about sanding down the back of the lid, but literally because these don't line up when it's flat, I don't think there'll be too much point. But anyway, that is this printed. I'll glue that on there, and I am going to make use of this as a nice little holder, little storage for my USB sticks. So there we have it. This thing is printed. It looks pretty cool, and it's going to make a nice little storage pot for my USB sticks. Now, I could probably reprint both of those parts to make it look a little bit better. But if I'm honest with you, with the amount of jip this thing has given me, I don't want to print it ever again. I don't even want to look my printer in the eyes ever again. One thing I will say though, lessons learned, if you ever print anything and it looks like this, please clean out your resin tank. If you remember me saying earlier, after the first one I tried to print, that it clogged up my filters when I cleaned out the resin. Well, the same thing happened with the second print. and I had an absolute nightmare juggling from filter to filter trying to get this resin sorted out. And at the end of it, I looked in the filter and there was loads of crappy little parts in there, which is what should have cured along here. So yeah, if you get anything that looks like that, change your resin straight away. So yeah, that is that. Wow, this is only the first episode, so I don't know what the rest of this series is going to look like. But for now, I am out of here. Until then, take it easy, and I will see you next time.